Methodologies scholars, let's talk time management. I invite you to start with a list and say, what's the most important thing in my life? Perhaps it's faith. And the second most important thing may be family. And then perhaps your health. And then your job. And then maybe the next thing is earning your doctorate. But then may come sports and social life and social media and things of this nature. That's important when you're planning your time, because you want to look at, are any of these things under those top 4 or 5 priorities and stealing time from your faith, your family, your health, your job, and earning your doctorate. So the start is setting your priority. Once you've done that, the next thing you'll need is a calendar where you're going to put those things that are priorities on your calendar. For example, faith. Maybe you attend church on Sunday, so that should go on your calendar. And then maybe your work is very predictable and maybe it's normal. So Monday through Friday, something like 7 to 5 or something of that nature. Well, that should go on your calendar. And maybe you like to go to the gym 4 times a week or take walks with your spouse or something of that nature. Let's get those on the calendar. And then let's say your children have Little League or basketball or soccer or something like that. Get that on the calendar. Now, once we've done that, we can see where we have time to put in activities towards your schoolwork and towards earning your doctorate. Notice now that what we're not putting on there are maybe your bowling league or watching sports on TV or social media or watching YouTube, unless it's this channel, of course. And once you realize that those things are actually time vampires, it'll allow you to fill your calendar with things that lead you to where you want to go. So that's the way you start with your time management. Now, once you've filled out your calendar, then you go back and you start a plan on what you want to do in your studies and when you want to accomplish that. And then you start putting those small milestones into the spaces on your calendar so you can orient your work. Now, I'm going to give you an important thing to remember while you're doing this. Do your plan in pencil or electronically so that you can change it. Be prepared to change it. And be prepared to be kind to yourself when you have to change it. Life's going to get in the way and you may miss deadlines. In fact, a lot of times you may miss deadlines. You may have to replan and set new deadlines. That is not a reason to get off track. That is a reason to dust yourself off, forgive yourself, and go forward. If your son or your daughter has to go to the emergency room because they have to have their tonsils removed, that is no reason to get upset because you've had to change your goals or your objectives as far as your plan is concerned. The mistake is not having to change your plan. The mistake is not having a plan. I would invite you to approach this with an agile or mentally nimble approach and a kind approach to you, because life happens in the process. Now, so once that plan's in place and those objectives are there, I think you'll find it easy to reflect back and look and see how much progress you can make and how fast you can make it. You know, there's an old saying. Do you know what they call a person who gets their doctorate with a 3.0 GPA? They call them doctor. There may come a time where you have to make a decision that you've got important family events and you turn an assignment late, and it may cost you a B in a class. If your overarching goal is to graduate while maintaining healthy relationships with your family, this is where it goes to setting your priorities. Is your priority to graduate with a perfect GPA, or is it to graduate with the family intact, with your health intact, and your career intact, and your faith life intact? Because if you have those things and you graduate, many would consider that more important than have those things fall apart and graduate with a perfect GPA. You know, in my case, early on in earning my doctorate, I got an A-, and it may have been my first class if I remember. And I thought about that and I said, you know what? Good for me. The perfect 4.0 monkey is off my back. And I went from that point on and I had fun in my program, didn't sweat it, graduated. And I think I had more fun in my program than many of my colleagues because they had that 4.0 monkey on their back for a year or 2 years and eventually got off their back too. But I had fun in the process. You know, it's an interesting thing. I remember my GPA from my undergrad. I remember my GPA from my master's. Genuinely, I'm not sure what my GPA was with my doctorate. And you know what else is funny? Nobody's ever asked me. In fact, nobody's ever asked me what my GPA was from my undergrad, my master's, or my doctorate. You know, many times when you're pursuing your doctorate, it's going to take you 20 to 30 hours a week. And so now you have everything on your calendar, but this may take some creativity. Perhaps every morning you're up and from 5:30 to 6:30, you're putting in an hour every day. And then perhaps after you've had dinner with your family and your kids are in bed, from 9 to 10, you're putting another hour in. So that's 10 hours Monday through Friday. And then perhaps you now are looking at putting in 3 hours in the morning on Saturday, 3 hours on Saturday afternoon, maybe 4 hours Sunday morning before church, and then maybe another 3 hours. And then very quickly, you've eclipsed 20 hours. But you've taken it bite at a time, and every day you've done something small to move you toward completing your dissertation or completing your schoolwork. In fact, I remember when I was earning my doctorate that I would have to change locations. And so I would get up and I'd do a couple hours of work at home. Then I'd go to the coffee shop, do a couple more hours of work, come back, take the dogs to the dog park, have my articles printed out, my highlighters, go through my articles and highlight them from that standpoint. And very easily on a Saturday, I could put 6 hours together. And gosh, there was plenty of times I took my son to a soccer game and I'd be reading or with my laptop, before the match and after the match. So there's all kinds of ways where you can fill in things. In fact, I just thought about this. I remember being at the dentist with an article in my lap, waiting for them to call me, highlighting and reading an article that was going to be in my literature review. There's all kinds of creative ways to build towards that 20, 30 hours a week. There will be weeks where maybe you don't have to put in the full 20, but there will be other weeks where you're closer to 30. So I'd imagine over a long period of time, 20 hours is probably a mean average, and it'll flow as you go through. One of the things that happens as you go through the doctoral process is you get better at it. As you get towards year 2 or year 3 or beyond, that 20 hours is chock full of productivity as you go through the program. In the beginning, it can be a little bit frustrating, a little bit disorienting because you're working a little bit harder and not as smart, but later on, the smarter, not harder kicks in as you become good at this. It's a skill like anything else. You're gonna have days where you just don't want to do it. And when that happens, it's time to change your plan and do something simple. Perhaps you commit to just writing 1 page. Man, I don't feel it, I'm not into it, but I know I can write 1 page. And you get down and you read 1 page. Or you say, man, I'm not into it, but you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna annotate 1 article and get that in my bibliography. Just 1 article. And it's amazing what happens. You're gonna feel a sense of progress and you're gonna feel a sense of accomplishment. And I believe you can create a certain momentum that work begets more work. And then sometimes you may surprise yourself and find that once you've written that first page, you're in a flow and you end up writing 2 pages. Or you annotate that article and then all of a sudden you take some of that and put it into your literature review because you got the juices going. It's a lot like going to the gym, that once you're there, it's not as bad as you made up in your mind. And very rarely do you leave the gym wishing you hadn't gone. And very rarely will you leave doing work for your doctorate and wish you hadn't done it. Sometimes you're stuck and you're not interested in doing any work or much more work. This is a great time to call somebody in your cohort and say, hey, how's it going with you? I am stuck. And sometimes the right ear and the right relationship is just what you need to get you back into a productive state of mind. Some of the things you'll learn as you're going through the process that will make you better at it is how to use APA. It's interesting with students that learning APA is such an inconvenience because they want to write their papers. But investing early into an APA manual and learning how to use APA will save you so much time going forward. Other tools that will help you that you'll learn, work with multiple monitors. Boy, I thought it was a big breakthrough when I started working with 2 monitors. Now I work with 3 and I don't think I could live without 3. It makes it so much easier because you have your research on one screen, what you're writing on another screen. Maybe a web browser open on the other screen, and it allows you to be much more productive. So APA, multiple monitors, definitely two things that will help you work more efficiently. And then of course, annotated bibliography tools. The tools that they have out there today are amazing. There's Zotero, Mendeley, EndNote, and many, many more. And those tools are something that will make you more efficient as you go forward. Another tool that a lot of people seem to overlook is Microsoft Word is now packed with grammar, spelling, structure tools that can make your writing far more efficient as well. It's so easy for Microsoft Word to scan, tell you where your work needs to be simplified. They'll even give you the Flesch-Kincaid readability index at the end of that, which helps you to simplify your language. So as you go on, I think those tools will be helpful for you. And I think that's all we've got. I appreciate you viewing. Click the bell and ring the subscribe and send us cash.
You can't say that.
Can't say that.
No.
So scratch all of that.
You can't say that at all.
Can't say that at all. I'm redacting that statement.
No, you don't want to say any of that.
I'm done.
Just
I'm
little tiny bit.
I'm little tiny done. I would think I would like 2 olives. That's what I think I would like in my. Let me help you get to graduation.